Good afternoon, everyone. Tim Wilmot here. I'm joined by my colleague, Peter Johnson. This is our second presentation today, more of a technical leaning to this session, a free training session during lockdown period. And we're trying to think of some high-level topics suitable for anyone that wants to go to the next level with Workbooks CRM, or indeed could be an administrator of the CRM system and wants to know more about customizing it, some of the advanced features and so on. This afternoon, we're going to go through setting up users, just really a brief overview of this topic, nothing in depth. There can be quite a lot to think about when setting up new users, but your task is made a lot easier in Workbooks with little things it has in there to save you time. So I'm now going to hand over to Pete. I'll come back after Pete's finished, after about 10 minutes or so, with any questions you've got. So any questions, please type those into the question box on your meeting control panel. Pete and I will do our best to answer those at the end. And yeah, so more on that later on. I'll just pass over to you, Pete.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Hopefully you can hear me, which means everybody else can. And show my screen also. So, Tim, can you hear me and can you see my screen?
Yeah, no problem.
Great. Okay, which means everybody else can. That's great. Okay, so users, setting up users, assigning user capabilities, and also something that's very relevant at the moment is the ability to disable users. Perhaps during this COVID lockdown period, you might have furloughed some users and you don't want those people logging in to the system and doing any work. Also, those that are working, you might not want the ability of them or for them to be able to assign tasks and activities to those users. So you want somebody to be removed from the assigned to fields so that you can't allocate activities to them or records of any sort. Okay, so let's take a look at where we control users. There's two little areas that we're going to have a look at, and they're both under configuration and also under users and security. So first of all, with users, you might have a list of users and you can apply capabilities to users, but the only way to apply capabilities is via adding them or making them part of a user group. Each of the user groups here, so if I go, for example, to a sales admin group that I have here, you can see this sales admin group has capabilities, and you can add capabilities and remove capabilities to that particular group, almost like a user role, if you like. And obviously a user could be a part of many roles, and therefore it accumulates the capabilities into that user. So for example, this sales admin has 29 particular capabilities. Really easy to add, by the way. You just click the add button here, select the one that you want, save and close, and that user's got it, or that user group I should say. So 29 capabilities for the sales admin, and if I have a look at a salesperson record, there's 56 capabilities there. So the 85, I think it was, yeah, is what that anybody that's got those or a part of those user groups would have all of those capabilities combined. It doesn't actually matter if the capability appears in both groups either. It will just have one of those capabilities. Now, when adding a user, you can add them to the user groups, or you can go to the user group and add users to it. So either way around, it doesn't matter how you approach that. You can actually approach it in either direction. But let's go off and have a look at users. So users in the system, you can click on any of these users here to open the record for the existing user. There's a few options in here, and what we're going to talk about first is the ability to disable a user so that they can't log in and also cannot be allocated any tasks, records, or any other type of activity in the system. And that is simply going into here, choosing login enabled, and then choosing save. Now, this will still use up a license because we have the license allocated to that user here. So be aware that it is still using a license. The only way to free up that license is to remove it and choose no addition. So login completely is denied here, and save. That second option that we just did there was the option that you would use if a user has left the organization. If you've got your pens in hand, it's worth making a note of this next statement, which is do not delete a user. I'll say again, do not delete a user. If you delete a user, all of the records that are associated with that user will go also. So do not delete a user. Just remove the login and also remove the allocated license for that user and any of the extensions that they might be allocated as well, to free up those licenses as well. So very useful, I think, in the event that perhaps people are furloughed or temporarily out of the business and intend to come back. Just disable them. To add a new user, fairly straightforward, I think. If I go in and choose new user, and we put in the person's details, we put in their email address, and we've got some other information here. You can see I've already got login enabled opted here. We need to select the type of logins you're going to allow for them. So are you going to allow them to use just a normal password, Google Authentication or Microsoft Authentication? The login protection one here, if that's on or off, you can see the option. This, whilst it's on, if the person that's logging in actually logs in from a PC that they didn't authenticate originally, then it will send a prompt to the screen to say, I'm just going to send you an email to make sure it's you. So the person must have access to their email account on the machine that they're accessing Workbooks. Otherwise, they won't be able to authenticate and log in on that machine. Because if you've got, if you're collecting your email on your phone and you authenticate it, the authentication relates to the phone rather than the PC that you sat in front of. So make sure that is either on or off, relevant to how this person will be logging in. As I say, you can switch on or off the different types of authentication, so how they actually log in. Most people, I think, use the password authentication, where you type in your email address and the password to follow. Number of people use the other authentication. I use a Google authentication when I log in. And password, you can set their initial password if you want, but they will be prompted if this is a first-time user anyway. But you can pop in the password and then make sure that they change it at the next login. So let's, and it does match your criteria for passwords. Normally, you know, a mix of characters, caps and others, along with some numbers and some other characters as well. So just make sure that that is the case. So let's just put one in here. And you have to do it twice, of course. Change it next login. I'm not sure about this second one. Can't think of a good reason why you would exempt the password from expiring. Forgotten password option is switched on. that is on the login screen. When you log into Workbooks and go to log in, there's a little option there that says forgotten password. In a preference, I would have that switched on. That way, as an administrator, if somebody forgets the password, they haven't got to ask you to renew it. They just get the normal circulated event of it resetting and sending them an email to log in. The languages, time zone and date and time, I think are fairly obvious here. So we're going to choose the English language option. We're going to use the time zone here. I tend to, when I'm doing this a lot, I tend to look down this list at the timing, and I go for the middle, which is 0, which gets you very quickly to the London one here. Yeah, so because it goes from minus numbers all the way up to the positives, so you get the whole time zone in there. And tick this box to set it each time. And then the allocated license. Some of you have mixed licenses using a bit of business and a bit of CRM, and you can choose which one of the licenses you're going to use for that particular user, and also allocate extensions, remembering that extensions don't have to match your number of licenses. So you might only have 1 or 2 people using the Outlook connector, half a dozen using the mapping, but you might have a total of 20 users, for example. So really useful. Now, if you do have multi-company extension in the system, then you will be asked to allocate for this user which one of the multiple organizations are their defaults. So how many, you can see here I've clicked on the Own Organizations tab. Now, with multi-organization, you might have many in here. You might have Wizard Systems UK, Wizard Systems, Services Limited, and so on. So which of these does this user have access to in terms of the database? And then if we go back here and choose Save, we can allocate one of those to be the default. So if you're creating an opportunity, or this user is, I should say, is creating an opportunity, by default, it will understand that it's using it for that particular own organization, but they will have the option, certainly this user will, to select the opportunity against a different organization. And your customer prospect type relationships with own organizations are optional as well for that particular user. So there's a reasonable amount there to consider, but I would say log in, make sure the password's right. Now, when we save this, you'll notice that it presents a new button here, and it says resend activation. At the point we just saved that, it sent an activation email to this user address. Yeah. Now, if that user hasn't had that activation, check to make sure you've got the email address correct, and also get them to check their spam folder and so on, just in case it's been filtered out. But they should get an email then with a big blue button that says activate, and they can go in, log in, and they will be prompted to change their password as expected. So next, we're going to have a look at the groups. So by default, every user you create will belong to the Everyone group, and you can see if we go back to groups, what capabilities the Everyone group has. There's actually 50 in this example system here. So they've got 50 capabilities already, but I can very easily extend their capabilities by getting them as part of another group here. So I'm going to make this sales manager and salesperson. So if I save and close that initial 50 capabilities, if I go back to save here, will be upped to a total of 112 capabilities. And you can see those listed here, but you can't add and remove these. As I say, you can only go back to the groups to allocate those out. API keys I'm going to miss for today. The database option here, you can have multiple databases, and you can give this user access or not to one or more of the databases, and they can also have different capabilities under each database, so be aware of that. So you might give them a test system or a training system and give them system admin rights because you're showing them a few things that they might need to do in the future, but that doesn't mean on the live system they've got the same amount of capabilities. But really easy to add a database, enable them access. So I could give this user some access to another database for a particular set time. You don't have to fill these in, but if you do leave them empty, it's for a permanent until you disable any access. So by choosing the add option, you can see this user now has access to 2 databases. Okay, so I am going to disable the login for this one and save again. And there we go. So adding users, making sure users can or can't log in, which is quite important right now, and allocating the licenses and capabilities. Okay, Tim, any other comments you've got from your end? There anything that you've...
I was just going to say, you mentioned their CRM edition and business edition. I think most people that are listening live right now, they might be on the CRM edition, but business edition has everything that CRM does, but with the additional capabilities to do to track financial transactions like orders and invoices, or if you ever want to link to, it's kind of the pricing page there. If you ever want to contemplate integrating to an accounting application, then that would certainly also need one or more users on business. And you can of course mix and match these 2 different editions, and there's the pro versions there as well that has some additional modules with them, so represents good value for money if you want to have some of the most common extensions. So we're now open up our call to any questions you've got, and those that are regulars, you'll be familiar with the format. Just pop in that question and we'll read it out with your first name. So Madeline asking, how do I use Google Authentication when logging in?
Oh, okay. So the Google Authentication, it gives you the option on your login screen. So if I, for one moment, if I come out of here, so you obviously have to have a Google account, and what you can do then is in your Google account, you must have set up the 2-step authentication and list Workbooks as an approved app. And what that does, it gives you then the Google login button. This is the Microsoft one, so you could have one, both, or none of these for your users. On those options that you just saw, this is the password authentication area. This is the Google one. This is the Microsoft one. If I click it, no worry about typing in. It wants to know which is my account that I'm using, and then I can go into said database that I want to use. So really easy, but you have to set it up. There's a very good document or help option that'll guide you through it if you're not sure of how to do your 2-step authentication within Google.
Okay, Lee's asking, what if someone's email address changes?
Okay, really simple. Just go and change it. So click back on the record of that, and you can see in here, you get the option to retype a new email address. You will find that you need to authenticate it again. So that user will get a new authentication email that they need to click. It just makes sure that it's a live email address.
Okay, don't think any more questions have come through there. So thanks very much, everyone, those who are listening live. We will post this to our YouTube channel as well after it's finished processing the recording, after we've finished. And we will meet again next Thursday obviously different topics. If you've got any suggestions for more advanced topics for this Tech Express session, then please email us at Wizard Systems. You can email Peter at wizard-systems.com, or myself, I'm Tim Wilmot, Tim at wizard-systems.com. Yes, so next Thursday in the morning, fairly basic session, suitable for all Workbooks users, and then a more advanced session in the afternoon. But thanks very much, those listening live, and thanks very much for those questions. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll speak to you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.